I've never had a cop ask me to open a door before, so obviously it was questionable. Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Happy New Year. I know it's February right now. At this time, I'm actually recording in January just because I'm trying to get ahead of the schedule. But how has everyone's holiday been? The last couple of weeks, I would say the first 2 weeks of my break, I was definitely feeling it. I was so happy to have a break from being on social media. If you guys don't know, I took the month of January off and it really improved everything else. I think that I was struggling with juggling everything all together at once, and I ended up feeling like I was barely holding on to everything, and I just needed to get myself back disciplined. I really felt that God was telling me that the reason why I felt so overwhelmed was because I wasn't disciplined. I wasn't disciplined in any area of my life. I used to be, but I fell off. And as I accumulated more things onto my list, I struggled more and more and more until I just felt like even if I took a break off of work or if I went on a vacation, I came back and I was still exhausted. It was like I felt like a bouncing ball. I never got quite off the ground, even if I had a chance to bounce up. I always came right back down to being like exhausted. So yeah, this month break really helped me to hone in on, okay, I need to be more disciplined. I need to get myself back on my eating schedule, back on my daily schedule of working out in the mornings, and just trying to figure out what works best for me and sticking to it, not like getting lazy and doing this and then slacking off in this area, and also trying to build a schedule for YouTube. But needless to say, I got all that for the most part taken care of. I'm still trying to work on it as we speak, but at least I was able to take that break in order to get all my other things disciplined. And now, of course, YouTube and Instagram is something else that I'm adding to the list, but it's so much easier now that I've gotten the other things taken care of. So that was a brief description of what's been going on, but I have a plethora of other things that has been going on that has pretty much been new in comparison to last year, 2021. We are now officially in 2022, and there's been a few of you who have started new things, whether it be trucking or just anything in general. I want you to know I'm proud of you, because to start something is one thing, but to set a goal to better yourself is definitely a good thing, and you should pat yourself on the back. So if any of you are out there that are trying to start something new in order to grow, in order to become better at whatever it may be, I'm happy for you, and I hope that you can stay consistent and do your best. That being said, we have a few things to talk about. So, obviously by the title of this video, you can already tell that I got pulled over. I got pulled over right before I took my break in January, actually, but I did not have a chance to actually tell you guys what happened. And so I got pulled over, and I'm going to go ahead and explain what happened now. I want to say it was the day after Christmas, actually, and I want to say I was in Kentucky, but I'm always somewhere, so don't quote me. But I know that I was driving on a freeway, and there was, I would say it was a moderate amount of traffic. It wasn't too crazy, and the speed limit was like 65. As I'm driving, all of a sudden, and I do mean all of a sudden, this cop car comes trailing along the side of my driver's side, and he has his sirens on where I can hear him, as well as his lights blaring. And I'm like, oh my. So obviously he was trying to get my attention, so I immediately slowed down, and I was hoping that he was just going to drive past and he was really just trying to get me to get over or something. But no, he was trying to get me. So I pulled over to the shoulder. Again, I was on the freeway. So I get over onto the shoulder, and in my mind, I'm like, there's no reason why I should have been pulled over. You know, I don't even really have time to really think about it, because he is at this point walking to the passenger side of my truck. So he gets over to the passenger side. I meet him while he's walking over there. I, of course, have my truck in park, and I go and sit on the passenger side. Now, before I continue, I want to tell you that this scenario was very odd. I did have the intuition to record it, so I did record it, and I have a few snippets of what transpired. I'm not necessarily going to have his voice apparent. I'll probably like botch his voice a little bit just for his privacy. He was a good cop, but the situation at hand was very odd, the way he worded certain things, and so I'm just gonna go ahead and explain it. So I get over to the passenger side and I roll the window down a little bit. So the policeman, he's like, "Hi, what did he say?" Why? He was like, "Hi, can you open your door?" Now, I've been pulled over before. I've even recorded some instances on YouTube. So, I have a few. I'll probably link the videos down. This would have been the first time that a cop asked me to open the door. I've never had a cop ask me to open a door before, so obviously it was questionable. I didn't know his intentions. I didn't try to think that he was thinking something, that he was trying to do something, but I just knew that pulling me over does not require me to open my door, especially since I don't know what you're pulling me over for. So I respond and I say, "Why?" And he's like, "Oh, well, it'll just make my job easier," pretty much is what he's saying. And I'm like, "Well, I have a dog. Can I just roll my window down or something like that?" And he proceeds to say, "Is the dog mean?" And I'm not going to lie to the man. So I'm like, "No, but I don't want her to get frightened." That's what I say. And so, which is true, because my Pepper, she doesn't necessarily like new people. She sometimes does, but it just depends. But either way, I'm not comfortable just opening my door. But he's like, "Okay, yeah, I'll manage." And I'm like, "Okay." So, you know, he wasn't really pushy with it, but it was just odd that he asked me to open my door. And I don't know. But anyways, so his next question is, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Obviously, as I just stated, I did not know. So of course I say, "No, I don't." And he then proceeds to tell me, "Well, actually, you didn't do anything wrong. We're just doing a DOT inspection, so I wanted to go ahead and get you inspected. We're just pulling drivers over at random," pretty much is what he says. And what's odd to me with that is, if that was the case, why would you ask me, "Do I know why you're pulling me over?" Because I wouldn't guess that you were just pulling me over at random, I I I, I don't want to think that he's trying to get me to admit to something or something, but it was just odd that that would be the question to ask, knowing that I didn't do anything wrong and you're just randomly pulling me over. Anyways, so he goes ahead and asks me for my registration and all that. I give him my license and all that stuff, and then he wants me to pull up my logs. So I give him my tablet, and I give him my logs or whatever. Fast forward, he goes back to his car, and again, he was a nice guy, so it's not like I felt intimidated or pushed by him or anything like that. But he did take a while. I want to say he took about 30 minutes to go ahead and do whatever he was doing. I don't know exactly what they're doing when they're in their car, if they're like pulling up stuff. But he went ahead, took about 30 minutes. Mind you, I'm on my way to an appointment, so I don't know if I was going to a shipper or a receiver, but I just know I had an appointment time and he was running close to my appointment time. He eventually comes back, and when he does, he informs me that I actually do have a violation. This was very odd to me. I know I keep saying the word odd, but that was the whole transaction.
Here's your driver's license back. I wrote on here one violation. On the 24th, you drove past 8 hours without taking a break.
I don't.
So on the regulation says you have to be in the sleeper or off duty for half an hour. On yours, you were on duty. So you need to make sure that's logged as something as an off duty or sleeper to qualify for that break time, okay?
He explains to me that, I want to say it was the 24th of December, he explains that I did not turn myself off duty or sleeper berth during the 30-minute period I needed to take in order for me to be able to drive after my 8 hours. So I've explained this on my channel before for those of you who aren't necessarily familiar. You cannot drive consecutively over 8 hours without taking a 30-minute break. Even though you can drive 11 hours per day, you have to take a 30-minute break after 8 hours in order for you to drive the rest of your hours. And so he was explaining that I did not take my break, essentially, which I informed him that earlier in 2021, they changed the regulation where you were able to be on duty as well as long as you weren't driving in order to get that 30-minute break in, right? He explained that I was on duty during this time instead of off duty, and I was telling him that they changed the regulation where that was permitted. He proceeds to say, well, if that's the case, then your company can fix it, right? I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like confrontation like that. And just to know that whatever he was telling me was false, I was happy to know that I wasn't violated for something that was true. Like, he was telling me something that was off, even though I didn't think I would get a violation because I felt like I was doing everything I was supposed to do. So I wasn't pressed with trying to get him to know the truth, but I did feel a little off about him just brushing it off as though, it's up to me to figure out the truth in it, and that once he wrote this violation, it was just set in stone. But nevertheless, I still wanted to get to my appointment. I did explain to him that he was wrong. He was trying to brush me off at this point. I think he was even tired of being out there, especially since I wasn't really in violation and he was just like here. So I pulled off. I eventually got squared away with my company, and long story short, I got it situated, and I'm not currently in violation, obviously, because he was false. And I ended up getting a reward, like I guess a bonus for not having any violations, pretty much having a clean DOT inspection. But what I wanted to point out was, number one, if you are a new truck driver or you are trying to get into it, I want you to know that if a cop tells you to open your door, number one, you don't have to. Another thing is, you definitely should be up to date with your regulations, not only to keep yourself up to date so that you can abide by these things, but also not everybody who pulls you over knows them. Not everybody is up to date with them. I was talking to Rave Trucking on YouTube. She was like, did you pull out the FMCSA website? And she reminded me, but I at the moment was not thinking about it. And I'm like, dang, that would have definitely made it a lot easier to show him. And on that website, it shows all the most recent regulations and things like that. And so if you run into this type of scenario and the cop is telling you this or that, you can just pull up this website and they'll be able to figure it out from there. But overall, it was very odd to me that I got pulled over by someone who didn't know the updated regulations, but decided we're gonna pull over a random truck. But it happens. So as you guys know, if you've been following me for a while, back in like 2020, I was on a search for like a natural deodorant, and I used so many of them, I can't lie to you. And for the longest time, I stuck with Native. I mean, I used Love and Beauty Planet, I used the Dove Zero Aluminum and all that stuff, but Native deodorant was the best at that point, and so I stuck with it. And I want to say I was using the vanilla flavor, the vanilla smelling one, the vanilla scent. It was pretty good. I did like it, but the only thing about all natural deodorants that I had used at that point is, for some reason, if you sweat one time, it will not cover you for the next sweat. Say for example, I don't know, you get scared, like maybe there's a jump scare or something, and sometimes you perspire because you were scared, and that's just a natural body reaction. Once you perspire that first time, your deodorant, to me, I don't know if it's for everybody else, but for me, it felt like if I would perspire one time, it would activate the deodorant. And the next thing I know, if I sweat again, like say, it activated and I eventually got dry again. If I sweat again, that deodorant, it would barely hold the next time around. Like, it wasn't an antiperspirant, of course. It just wasn't long lasting for me. So I want to say, like, after 8 hours or so, I would pretty much have to freshen up underneath my arms. And while that's not a terrible thing, I felt like I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing out on a better natural deodorant. So I ended up researching and I came across this one deodorant. Not to mention a few of you did recommend it to me, but I came across this deodorant called Lume or Lume. I don't know how it's pronounced, but Lume. I went on their website and I can't lie, it was a little pricey. So in order to get free shipping, I think you needed to spend like $35. So I ended up purchasing 2 of their deodorants and a bar of soap, and I spent like almost $40 for that, which was a little pricey, okay? But I figure it was a great cause. I've seen nothing but good reviews, and they have, like, I want to say famous commercials where, like, they say these weird, uncanny things where they're talking about, like, crotch sweat and stuff like that. And they claim that you can use this deodorant on, like, your crotch and all that stuff, and I don't need that, so I wasn't really trying to get it for that. But they were just saying that it was natural and that it was going to prevent bacteria and all that stuff, whatever. So I ordered it, right? And it came to me in about a week. And when I got it in the mail, I actually wasn't at home. My mother, she grabbed it for me. And so I asked her if she could open it for me, and she did. And I don't know what I was expecting for her to say, but it definitely wasn't what she said. She told me that she didn't like the way it smelled, that it smelled like an old diaper. And that was so odd to me because I ordered the warm vanilla scent. So I can't lie, I got a little agitated because it's like, maybe she's just saying that it's an acquired smell. Like, why would she sit up there? She know I just paid like $40 for this deodorant. What you mean it stink? Like, this not the time to be telling me that something I spent that much money for is not gonna work. You know what I'm saying? So I eventually got home and I grabbed the deodorant, and I went to open the cap and it has these 3 little holes in it, and I sniffed it, and y'all, yeah, that deodorant, it stinks. It's not the type of stink where it's like, you know how somebody will say like, oh, that perfume smells like a granny perfume, or because it's like real strong or whatever, and they'll be like, ugh, it stinks. Or like, ugh, this candle stinks. Look at it. It's like a certain type of candle. No, this isn't the type of stink I'm talking about. This stink is the type of stink where you sniff it and you like you have like you pull back from it. It's a funk. It was to the point where I googled Lume deodorant stinks, right? And I finally came across reviews, and a lot of people, I don't even get it because I don't know how I couldn't see this before, but a lot of people were saying that Lume deodorant smells like straight booty. I honestly don't know what it smells like, but it don't smell like no type of, it don't necessarily smell like chemicals. It smell like funk. And what I have no real words. It's the type of thing where you actually get irritated because this gotta be a joke. Like, why would y'all create a product that stinks, but it's supposed to ward off stench? I just don't get it. Like, this is the type of as seen on TV gimmicky product that really upsets me. And what's worse is, it was to the point where I was looking on YouTube and I was Googling up reviews, and some people were saying like, the reason why people don't like it is because they use too much of it. What you're supposed to do is take just a little bit and you wipe it onto your skin, you rub it in until it's clear, and that smell, the nasty smell that you smell will go away. I don't care what directions you telling me I'm supposed to do. If it smells like that to begin with, you think I'm gonna rub it into my skin after I done got out the shower? I started to understand that this product is not for someone who's just looking for a natural deodorant. Because I should have known when they were talking about crotch fumes, because I don't need a deodorant for that. You know what I'm saying? I just needed something that was natural, that smelled good and fresh underneath my arms, that didn't crap out on me after a while, you know? I say that to say that after Lume, I actually quit. looking for natural deodorants, and I'm currently wearing Dove deodorant, the real stuff. I hate to say this, but Loom like turned me off of natural deodorants. And it's not to say that I won't try again in the future, but I'll probably only try if I'm going through something that requires me to sort of cut down on toxins. Like, say for instance, I'm trying for a kid or something like that. Then I'll look back into natural deodorants. But as of now, the way Loom had me upset that I spent $40 for something that stink, and I done went through so many natural deodorants and nothing quite did for me what I wanted it to do. No. So I don't know. If you've tried Loom deodorant, please let me know. I have like Pepper's dog hair stuck to my nails and it's upsetting me. But if you've tried Loom deodorant, tell me if you like it. And if you don't, please don't tell me I'm alone with thinking that it stinks, because it smelled nothing like warm vanilla. Okay, nothing like warm vanilla. Spider-Man No Way Home. I really wanted to talk about this movie, but I didn't in the last video because it was a vlog, and now that we've been over break, I definitely saw this movie multiple times, and I wanted to give you guys just a brief review of it. So if you have not seen the movie, I'm actually disappointed in you, because the movie has been out for weeks now, almost a month at this point. And if you have not seen it, it was not in your priority list at all, because this movie was top tier. Needless to say, I'm about to get into some spoilers, and so I'll give you a timestamp when I'm finished talking about this movie. But Spider-Man No Way Home was freaking amazing. I enjoyed it so much, and I can't say I cried, but it did pull on some heartstrings for sure. Obviously, if you are a Marvel fan or a superhero fan or anything of that sort, you already sort of knew what to expect when you went into this movie, because not only were there rumors, but obviously there were a lot of speculation on them having certain characters coming in. And obviously in the trailer we saw Doc Ock, and we saw Green Goblin, and we saw remnants of Sandman and Electro in the trailers. And obviously these are villains to the previous Spider-Mans, so the Andrew Garfield and the Tobey Maguire. And then it's obviously the Tom Holland film, so we could only assume that not only were the villains of the previous movies coming in, but also the Spider-Mans of the previous movies. And I was so hype. You have to understand how hype I was. I was so hype. I was so excited. So excited. Child, off rip, the best performance to me, hands down, which I didn't hear a lot of people say this, but it was Aunt May to me. Melissa Tomei, I don't know how to say her name, but I absolutely loved her performance as Aunt May. It really only comes down to the last scene where Peter was fighting Green Goblin, and he eventually had his glider come and hit her, and she got up as though she was fine. They were about to leave, and then she just collapsed, and she was in disarray. She didn't even know that she was bleeding out and practically dying. And man, that scene was a breath of fresh air for a number of reasons. I'll get on the other reasons a little bit later, but just knowing that it wasn't the cliche Uncle Ben on the ground, and I'm not necessarily upset with those previous scenes.
Just popping in to reiterate here, where I was really coming from was in-depth scenes. Oftentimes the monumental characters in the main character's life, they either die off screen or die with grace, or they often know that they're dying, and it's just a little played out. It's very traditional.
It's not to say that I'm exhausted with that approach, but to see her approach, where she was like, oh yeah, I'm fine, let's go, you aren't wrong, this is not your fault, with power comes great responsibility. The fact that she doesn't know that she's bleeding out because she has adrenaline and she doesn't really feel anything, she's shaken up, she's about to walk with him, and then she collapses, and she's like, what's wrong? He's like coming to realization that his aunt is dying, and man, that was like one of the best scenes of the movie. Man, I don't even really know how to explain it, but I enjoyed it so much because I love the way she played that scene out. Just her going through the emotions of her being shaken up and scared, and also trying to be the one that grounds Peter, making sure that he's not shaken up and scared, and giving him confidence, even though she clearly is in over her head to be right next to this super Spider-Man, and she's just an aunt, a human, but she's trying to be tall and strong for him. And then next thing you know, she's falling, and she doesn't she it's like, man, that was just so many different emotions in one that she portrayed.
To go deeper into this, the real reason why I love this scene is because it takes the audience on a whole nother ride. Because when I was watching this scene for the first time in theaters, when I saw that she got hit by the glider, I immediately was shot back to the first Spider-Man movie when Willem Dafoe, Norman Osborn died off of his glider, and I just knew that she was done for. But I expected the traditional scene where she does the death faint and all that stuff. But when she got up, it had me hopeful that she was going to live. And then when I started to see her shaking and I could tell that she was a little delirious, it had me go pretty much up and down of like, is she gonna live or is she dying? And by the time she was in Peter's arms, I could tell that she was dying and that she was just taking us on this roller coaster ride of hope and then devastation. And I just loved that they played with that scene instead of giving us the traditional, oh, I'm dying, Peter, I love you.
And it was amazing. I loved it. Obviously, outside of her, another great performance was Andrew Garfield. I absolutely loved him. He was amazing. I've always loved how charismatic Andrew Garfield is. In any of his films, he's pretty much been charismatic for as long as I've seen him on the big screen. And I really enjoy his portrayal of Peter Parker because it's not like any of the others that we've seen. And I just enjoyed him on screen, and he clearly stealed the show in the moments where they had him on screen. Obviously, I was super excited to see Tobey Maguire. He is like the Spider-Man. One thing I will say is, prior to seeing this movie, I used to say that Andrew Garfield was my favorite Spider-Man, not for the sake of the movies, because the movies were trash, but for the sake of his portrayal and his performance, and just him being Spider-Man in itself. It just was more entertaining to me. Not his dialogue, not his storyline, but just the way that he was Spider-Man, if that makes sense. And my gripes with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, I will admit, out of ignorance, was that to me it felt like a Kid's Bop version of Spider-Man. It just didn't feel as mature as the other movies, and because I was so used to him being more mature, dealing with more mature circumstances, like for example, Tobey Maguire, he was dealing with real life problems of being broke and trying to make a living and all of these things. And then obviously Andrew Garfield, he encountered the death of his uncle on screen so we could see it and things like that, and then his girlfriend Gwen, and we just saw him deal with things, and they gave him bigger character arcs. And the thing that I had an issue with the first two Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland, and what had me not really caring for his Spider-Man, not to say he wasn't good, but just that it wasn't my favorite, was that he didn't really encounter things where his stakes were super high. Even if he did go through certain situations, he still had a happy ending. He didn't really have huge stakes where he had to grow substantially, It just wasn't my favorite. I thought to myself, it was because they kept his origin story off screen. But after seeing No Way Home, it completely derailed my original perception of Spider-Man. Now, Tom Holland's trilogy is my absolute favorite. Not just because we got the Willem Dafoe, which was amazing, and the Alfred Molina, and Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and all that at the end, but because, which a lot of you know, the trilogy was his origin. The trilogy was portraying his full origin. Not that we hadn't seen it on screen, because we are so used to Peter's origin being that his Uncle Ben dies, he goes through that dark period, and he comes out on top, being someone who recognizes his responsibility for having the power that he has. We had never heard the power comes great responsibility speech with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. We had never seen him encounter that death. We barely even heard of Uncle Ben in these trilogies, and it's in his trilogy. And it's not to say that I wanted to see Uncle Ben die again, because that's played out. But to know now that their whole goal was to show him pre-character arc, or like pre-origin, or like, I guess, pre-dark I don't know how to really explain it. He didn't yet go through what we've seen majority of the Spider-Mans before him go through in like the first movie. And that, like, it not only concluded his story, or not, I wouldn't even say concluded, but it not only wrapped in his story and made the other two films better on an exponential basis, but it also concluded the other Spider-Man stories and made them much better. Like, this one movie did so much for every single Spider-Man film that I had seen up until that point, that I purchased them all. And I already purchased pretty much all superhero movies, just because they're like my comfort films. Whatever I'm doing, even if I'm like about to do my hair or I'm about to eat, I will turn on one of those movies just for the sake of watching them. Like, they're my comfort movies. But I bought all the Spider-Man movies after this movie. That says a lot. Obviously, Willem Dafoe was completely great. Like, my goodness, I was so happy to see him. And my favorite scene, which I know is a lot of people's favorite scene, was when he was fighting Peter after Peter had his Spidey sense and realized that Goblin was back, and they started fighting, and it was a point where Peter was literally punching the crap out of Willem. I keep saying Willem, but I guess Green Goblin. And you could see the enjoyment and the chaotic, like, presence of the Green Goblin inside of him coming out onto his face. And all you see is this sadistic smile. And man, it was so good, because I'm telling you, this Green Goblin seemed a lot more aggressive and crazy than the Green Goblin we saw in the first Spider-Man movie. I was so hyped. I was so unbelievably hyped. And I love Willem Dafoe's portrayal of him. And it just seemed like he took off some of the, I guess, some of the strings that he had with the last movie, and he had a chance to just be freely himself, and he just owned this role. I feel like this was the best version of Green Goblin out of every movie he'd been in before. And to go back onto the Spidey senses, or the Peter tingle, man, I want to say, if not for the Aunt May passing scene, the scene where you saw his Peter tingle at large, oh my goodness. It's something about that scene where you see him, like, all of a sudden the background gets blurry and he's just looking around, and he's like trying to hone in what is causing my senses to heighten. And next thing you know, and the weird thing about it is, if you pay attention to the scene, you can see the first person that you can see in the background is Green Goblin, but you're not paying attention because you're looking at Peter. And Peter ultimately, it's like his senses just say snap, and then he like does the web shooter on Green Goblin. But my goodness, I love the fact that they are expanding on his abilities, that we can see his Peter tingle, his Spidey senses, because we hadn't really seen them do too much with it in the previous movies. I even went back to them just to make sure, but I just love that in this movie specifically, and even the movie before when he was fighting Mysterio, but in this movie, seeing his Peter tingle work to help him in fighting, especially since we know that his web shooters are made and not coming out of him, we could just see his powers at large, and it was amazing to watch. So overall, out of every single Spider-Man movie, I would say that this movie was the most redemptive, the most enjoyable, and I would say that it is my favorite Spider-Man movie. Cliche as it may be, because I love to be the one going against the grain when it comes to stuff like that, but I can't lie, it was my favorite Spider-Man movie as of yet. I have heard that they are going to create more Spider-Man movies in the future, especially with Tom Holland, and I am so happy for it, and I can't wait to see him at a more adult age doing more adult things, just because I love gritty movies. I love when characters have higher stakes as opposed to, the smaller stakes and the quippy like dialogue and all that stuff. I love when things get serious. So, that being said, this video is getting a little bit long, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut it short because I don't really have many other things to talk about. I might put them in another video, but let me know if you guys really enjoyed the Spider-Man movie, and if you did, please let me know in the comments how you liked it, what were your favorite parts, and again, let me know how your first month of the year has been. I love you all so much, and I cannot wait to see you in the next video.